Thank you, Richard, for making time. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome. We've been super excited to start rolling out sort of the pre-alpha test build to some of you, and it's just been amazing to see your response, especially given that we have absolutely minimal onboarding and tutorial support right now. So it's been really, really fun to see all of you come together and join us, and mix up with our veteran play testers, who I'm sure are happy to have new friends in competition. And especially thank you for helping other new players get on board. Huge props to all of you. Definitely want to call out Proton, Vito, especially for some amazing support that they have been giving, especially since they are also very new players. So thank you so much, guys and gals, and everyone else. I am really excited to have you here, and especially since you haven't had. I mean, you've heard, played with me, talked to me a bunch. You're probably bored of talking to Makimi and Raventhon. So we have, um, the, the real creative force behind Chaos Agents here today with us, Richard. And just so for those of you who don't know, Richard, John, and I, and the rest of our team, Ben, Kyle, everyone, we started Chaos Agents and Popularium about 2 years ago. We are just about to hit, I think, 2 years and 4 months of development. So very excited, given where we're at today, and what you get to see sort of is the tip of the iceberg compared to everything that Richard has conceptualized and that we have in the pipeline. So when I say tip of the iceberg, I truly mean tip of the iceberg. So this is an opportunity for us to dive in and ask Richard everything and anything that you want about Chaos Agents and in general. So what we've done to get us started is we've obviously we have some very common questions that come up a lot in the feedback, especially as new players join. So what we wanted to do is start off with a couple of those questions and then transition to this format that Mackie has up here to let all of you ask your questions directly. Do jump in there with your questions, because if not, then I'm just going to take up all the airtime talking to Richard, and trust me, I get to talk to Richard enough. Um, so with that, Richard, you ready on your side?
I am ready.
Okay, awesome. So the first question, and this is a classic. Stuff just to learn the basics of the game is that they feel like they want more agency, more control over their agents, and that's very interesting given the concepts you had for the game to begin with, the journey that's brought us here, and how we plan to evolve things. So please take it away. I know this is one of your favorite topics.
Yeah, it is a natural thing to wish for because this game does appear to offer less control than you would expect, but it is at its heart an auto battler, and one of the things that really intrigued me most about the idea of combining auto battler with battle royale was the fact that you could get a game with lots of people, huge direct interaction, and yet not have it determined by politics. You could avoid the feeling that you were being picked on. So this is something which the entirety of King of Tokyo, for example, is built around. For those of you who are familiar with that game, King of Tokyo works as a multiplayer game because you don't have complete control over who you attack. And a lot of people, when they first played, sort of felt like they should be able to pick on the weakest or whatever. But it was very important for that design to have it so that you didn't have a lot of control over who you attacked, and you also had a lot of control of whether you were standing in the firing line. And so that is what I was after with this multiplayer experience. Now, when it was first pitched, I actually envisioned it as being even less control than we have now. Um, my early drafts were that you would choose your powers, but your character would have more personality. So you might have a character that just would charge into battle a lot, or would go off and collect gems, or would be aggressive, but when they took some damage, they would run for the hills. Um, and We never really tested that much, but the system which the team put together of choosing what you wanted to prioritize and what your threshold for running, it synergized really well with the idea of the three different goals in the game, and it gave a surprising amount of control over your character once you got used to it. So that hopefully explains where we're coming from with regard to how much control you do have. And I suspect that the players who want more control will find if they stick with it, they have more control than they expected. And they'll also get more control in the long run as we begin to flesh out these skill trees. Right now, your skill tree does not. The more we flesh it out, the more it gives you this indirect control of your character. But as it's fleshed out even further, there will be even more. For instance, there will actually be some skills which have you prioritize at a long range weak players, which is something people want. But rather than being something you can choose all the time, it's going to be sort of the special purview of certain characters. And you'll find similar things which will adjust the AI in ways to give you a little bit more a more direct agency.
Fantastic. Thank you, Richard. That takes me into actually another question. The second question we wanted to ask, which synergizes really well with with your answer here, which is always a fun thing for the community to hear about, which is what are some of the types of skills that we will be working towards? What are some of the examples of skills that you're excited about, both that you're excited about from a gameplay perspective and also skills that you think will contribute towards this idea that the more skills you deploy, the more agency and control you'll have towards how your agent ends up trying to win the game.
Well, yeah, there's Excel sheets filled with concepts that I'm looking forward to seeing in the game, but certainly some of them are manipulating the terrain in some way, either by putting down turrets, summoning creatures, creating areas which have traps or will slow people down. I would like to get some big splashy effects, ones where they don't come out till later, but then you sort of transform into another form, like maybe you grow twice the size and become amazing at melee and so forth. There's will be lots of things which build up over time, like for example, every time you collect a crystal, you're charging up all your or integrated more into the combat. Right now, specializing in crystal and specializing in combat is more separate than I would like to see it in the long run. So there's things where you can trap the crystals and they will blow up on people. Ones will they'll power up your combat abilities, and combat abilities that when you get a kill, you'll be faster at collecting crystals, that sort of thing. Teleport abilities, ones where you can trigger it to teleport to a random space on the map. or maybe not random, maybe one which is maximally distant from everybody, or maybe some of them have you teleporting into the hottest zone there is, hopefully attached to some sort of armor. But yeah, off the top of my head, those are a few of the ideas. I'm sure that prompted I could go on for ages, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of my personal favorites that is an entire class of entire like genre of skills there, Richard, which you came up with was what we call the active skills that are in development, which basically are skills that. Richard, do you want to talk about active skills, or do you want me to spoil?
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to talk about them. Yeah, I actually are they not are they not in the game in any form right now?
No, we don't have active skills yet. No.
Oh, cool. Yeah, yeah. So I get confused because the active skills are very meta, and so
Yeah, exactly.
the
Yeah.
they bleed over in the way I categorize the skills into the time element and the brain element, which are also meta. But yeah, the um, I divided up the character skills into two categories: active and passive, and it's actually counterintuitive. They kind of look active, which is why it's a terrible terminology. Because if you have like a fireball, you don't think of it as a passive skill, but in this game, it kind of is because your character casts the fireball without prompting. But the active skills are ones that you as a player trigger, and the way those work is they upgrade your elements. So, for example, the um, armor element. What is the one that gives you armor?
Shield.
Shield. Okay, yeah. So the shield element, for instance, if you upgraded it with some active modifiers, you might be able to make it so that every time you pump them, you're getting more shield, or you're getting some shield permanently, or the turns you do it, you're buffing your attacks. And so this is a great point, Arca, because that is another way to really get the agent see attack that character. I want to attack the weakest character, although, as I said, in some so that you can develop your character in this way where you're giving them bigger and bigger skills, or you can augment it with things where the elements you play are giving you these temporary or even permanent boosts. And to give you an idea of how much of a part of the design space that is, I think my original goal, and all else being equal, I think this is what I'd still aim for. I was picturing it being something between 30 and 40% of your skills would be these these active skills. It's a really terrible terminology. It is, in some sense, active and passive because you, as the player, are activating these versus being passive. But when you look at the characters, it's kind of the opposite. Your character is using their sniper weapon or teleporting that looks active, whereas the thing you're doing with your elements kind of looks passive. But
Thank you, Richard. Yeah, I was hoping that you would make that connection with the first question because I think that's such a core aspect of the design that we just haven't put out there yet, along with obviously the skill classes that will change everything that we have dramatically in terms of how much folks can control. On that note, I think a connected question there is Tiernan asks that on the thought of skill trees, will they be diverse enough that a single agent might be able to have two or more builds between tournaments? I feel like the
oh,
agent that I've been using recently is very one-dimensional, and I struggle to figure out how to best employ him.
um, you struggle. So I would think that the struggle would be associated with multiple paths, but so maybe I'm misunderstanding. But uh, because a character with multiple paths, you will always have a struggle because you will be deciding which paths are best to pursue, and that will be filtered through the opportunities that avail itself. So just because you want to pursue one path may uh, doesn't mean that it'll be the correct path because you might not be getting a lot of support from the RNG gods. But sidestepping that potential misunderstanding about the concern, the intent is that yes, you have a lot of a lot of different options for how to explore the characters. There's a tension in unique asset games, which is what this, of course, is intending to be, between providing, between making your characters feel like you really can play the game with them and they're not driving how you should play. That is giving you variety and also having character. The less decisions you have, the more character it has. The more decisions you have, the less character is intrinsic. And so it's a balancing act. But where we're heading is that each of these characters will have three different uh, classes, and that each of those classes is potentially a standalone direction that you will go. In practice, you'll choose a combination. So, for example, using uh, the terminology from the design docs, I forget what we ended up calling them, but you'd be a sniper and a summoner and a sentinel. And so if you focused on your sentinel path, you're going to end up with a character which is very defensive, good with melee, and if you focus on your sniper path, it's likely to be more crunchy, longer distance combat, deadly at a distance, that sort of thing. Probably some good evasion. And the summoner, well, you're going to be probably some evasion also, but also summoning characters to get in harm's way for you. Now, if you had those three classes, not all of them are going to be equally good, because you're going to have you're going to randomly get some of those lines will be better support skills than standalone. But out of those three lines, you should get, say, at least two different really distinct directions that you could go. And if the game went long enough, of course, you can get all your skills. We intend to make it so that the game allows you to get something more like, I forget where we were settled on, but say 50%. It's more than 50% maybe, but not significantly off that. But then within a particular class, you will also occasionally get two different lines, because there'll be different skills that you could work your strategy around. Anyway, this is going to take a lot of development work, a lot of and a lot of balancing, but it is absolutely the intent that when you play your character, that you will generally have several different directions you could go, that will work better or worse depending on the circumstances that have arisen both in the arena and with the hands you're dealt.
If I can just very, very quickly follow up to Richard, and I guess Arca could answer this question too. I'm not sure which one of you would be better, but that question that you just answered seems very closely related to a discussion that was ongoing yesterday and today about, hey, the tiles are dealt to these elements, and in order to free up the tiles, I need to spend them in that element. So it doesn't really feel, it feels just sort of like maybe I'm changing the order a little bit, but ultimately I have to be choosing what the tiles select, and so it doesn't seem like I have any ability to specialize. So putting aside whether or not I agree with that sentiment, it seems like the question is related to that. Like, how is it going to be I can choose to go into sniper if in order to free up tiles I need to be selecting skills?
No, that's a
Non-sniper
really good way
classes.
to package the issue. The idea there is that even though, I mean, it's absolutely correct, you will, during the course of the game, if you last in the game for 10 minutes, it doesn't matter how you play, you're going to get the exact same tiles for a particular instance of the game. However, your decision to go into sniper depends on what you do when you play those tiles. If you build up a reserve, you'll get a lot of experience points and you'll get a lot more out of your sniper. Now, the game lasts long enough that you're going to get some of everything. Occasionally, you're going to get completely, you're going to go completely dry in a particular category and you won't be able to pursue it. But that's going to be kind of rare because, in particular, because each of these, there's 3 different classes, and you're getting uh, 1/3 of your of your experience points are going to each of those classes. But it makes a very big difference whether you cash them in at 1 in order to get in order to build up in another area, or if you save them until you've got 2 or 3 or 4. And in particular, that is one of the reasons why the design makes it so that when you play 1 tile versus 4 tiles, that you get exactly the same instant bonus. And that is because, and so that makes it so that spending the 1, even though you're really hosing yourself on the experience within that category, you're building up the potential and going into another category, and you're getting exactly the same one-shot bonus. So hopefully that explains where we're coming from and why we believe that you'll have why we think you'll have agency in which direction you want to develop your character.
Thanks, Richard. Thank you, Andrew. I want to go back to Tiernan very quickly and see, Tiernan, if your question was answered there, and we'll move on. And if not, going once, going twice.
Yeah, that was good. Thank you, Richard.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Tiernan. All right. So actually, moving on to a fun one from Paintface, Richard, if you were to stylize yourself as an agent in the world of Chaos Agents, what traits or skill classes would your character have?
Oh my gosh, I would I would have brain and time for sure. I don't know what the skill classes associated with that are, but just because I really enjoy the meta powers, and if balanced correctly, they're going to be something where getting time will give you extra actions, but the cost will be that other people will be developed earlier in the game faster. And so your ability to make it in a meaningful way to the end game may not be as strong. So yeah, my favorite elements are the meta elements, and as we develop these active abilities, I'm going to be definitely partial towards ones that build up the power of your control panel, that phase of the game. So yeah.
Thanks, Richard, and thank you, Paintface. Next, we will call up Dr. Kimchi, MD. So the first time we have an actual MD joining us. I'm sorry, I was trying to find a better joke. It's such a great name. Dr. Kimchi wants to ask their own question. So, Dr. Kimchi, take it away.
I'd like to start by saying I'm not a real doctor. Let's make that very clear. But hey, Richard, understandably, you've tried to create something fresh and original with Chaos Agents, and really, even early or this early into development, I think we all agree you're accomplishing that. Being that you're a prolific game designer, are there any kind of rituals or processes in the way that you create new ideas, or do you find that most of those come to you organically? More specifically, what was the catalyst for creating Chaos Agents?
Um, yeah, my inspiration comes from a lot of different places, but my uh, most commonly, what happens is that I play games both of other people's and my own very introspectively, and so I look for what is special in them and what is exciting, and then I try to play around with those ideas and see what else I can do with them. So essentially, adding it to your tool basket. Um, so my games tend to be a process of evolution rather than revolution. And in the end, you may end up with a revolutionary game, but the steps to get there are all usually built slowly upon one another. So, in particular, here, I'm uh, I'm absolutely passionate about auto battlers. I think I've been interested in games which bridge the gap between traditional computer games and board games. That is, when I play a game like StarCraft, um, I guess showing my age by using that as my go-to example, um, this feels like a completely different experience, even though that's a sort of a very gamey game. It's not like a first-person shooter, but certainly that's even more extreme. They feel more like simulations. When I play these games, I rarely get the sort of feeling I get when I play a table game. So you look at the distance between a StarCraft or first-person shooter and Scrabble or Risk or Dominion or any of these other games, and it just feels like they're almost different species of thing. They shouldn't be in the same category. And Auto Battle is one of the reasons they really appeal to me is because they are in that vast gulf in between where when you play them, you really feel like you're playing a board game. You have the time to to consider your move, even though it is on the clock, and you feel like you're playing a table game. On the other hand, the computer's integral, and sitting back and watching it is something which is very well done on the computer, and so I just love that space. And as soon as uh, auto chess sort of broke through, I began to think about different ways to employ it because it seemed to me a very rich category. So that's one of the pillars of chaos agents. The other two, I've got sort of similar feelings about the the unique agency the unique agents, the unique player assets is something which I've been thinking about and evolving since the early days of Magic, where I was missing the fact that players had unique treasures, which was their first impression of a game like Magic, and their first experience, perhaps playing it, with their chums at school or around the kitchen table or something like that. But as you get more and more into the game, it becomes less and less about having unique treasures and more about playing this strategy game, which is very engaging to a lot of people, but no longer has that feeling of uniqueness that is there at the start. And so this of course this concept I explored very directly in Keyforge, and believe it has a lot of possibility in games, and so continue to explore it. And then there's um, battle royales, which I've I haven't played that much, but I'm very excited by big event games, and was frankly surprised to see them become really popular. And so my introspection in that case is like looking at it as, well, why did this succeed despite what I would have predicted? And I began looking at it and seeing that the different merits that this form of games has, and how to apply it to designs of my own. So yeah, I dip a lot into this marvelous world of games, which is so rich these days, since we are clearly in a golden age of games, and trying to understand it and make it work as my own.
Thank you, Richard. What a great question. Thank you, Dr. Kimchi. Um, we'll now go to more than most. More than most. Who wants to also ask their own question?
Hi, Richard. My first introduction to algorithmic games was SoulForge Fusion, and I felt that like combinatorial influences within my first playthrough. I have a little bit of a background in combinatorics, so I wanted to ask you, in this dive into like a digital form, was there anything that you were super excited to explore specifically from that combinatorialist nerd inside of you?
Oh, sure. The well, one of the things which I didn't explore as fully as I wanted to with Keyforge was really algorithmically generated cards, um, and so that was something we did. Um, and so that's something that really excites me. So with Keyforge, I relied at first, at least, almost entirely, on your unique deck. Had cards which existed in other decks, but um, the combination was unique. And I knew that there was this area that was interesting, which I was not exploring as much in in the idea of making it so that the cards themselves were unique. Um, and eventually, I got that with Keyforge in some really interesting ways. I made it so that if your deck in Keyforge spawned, for example, a witch, that it might change one of your other cards into a frog and buff another card. So a card that had been changed into a frog would have some of the qualities of the frog and some of the qualities of the original character, and the buffed character would be random, so that not all, so that you would have uh, this interesting character introduced by having the witch in the deck. Or some of them would just sprinkle around damage symbols, and so you would have these cards which would be augmented in this packaged way, a very combinatorial way, if you will. Um, and and the reason why I had difficulty figuring it out at first is because I was having difficulty breaking out of the rut of thinking of a particular card as um, beyond. I didn't want to make it so that you had some ogres, and then you had some ogres that were a little stronger than others or a little weaker than others. That felt boring, and and like it wasn't meeting the potential of what we had there. But making it so that the cards introduced these holistic changes to the deck itself was pretty exciting to me. So that would be one area which the combinatorics, the potential opened by the combinatorics of deck generation, was really interesting to me.
Thank you, Richard. More than most. Any follow ups to that, or we'll move on?
No, thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you. Great question. Okay, actually, what I'm going to do is just ask a question before I go to Steeks' question, which is also a very interesting one that came from the community in general earlier, which is actually quite relevant to the last two questions that we've gotten, which Richard is another classic, which is with sort of a near infinite combination of agents. How do you actually balance such a game?
Well, um, radically, we have a different view of balance. So it is hubris to think you could actually balance these systems and leave them and keep them interesting. So so I always in all my design really I err on the side of presenting variety to the players, um, as opposed to curating a more controlled environment, and that's because I prefer the variety and don't mind sacrificing, making it so that some of the instances of the games don't work as well or are unbalanced in order to get that variety. So, in particular, when people talk about balance in board games, they're usually talking about everybody having a fair position. And when you look at sports, that is not the way people view it at all. When you look at the uh, basketball players or baseball players or playing squash, everybody's bringing these unique tools to the game, and that is what makes sports so interesting to the spectators. The spectators are uh, find the difference in player capability, because otherwise, you're just betting on random outcomes or rooting for your coin tosses. But the fact that they are different and they have different capabilities, and different in interesting ways, that's what I'm looking for in a game like Keyforge. So we expect the characters to be of different powers. We know they'll be of different powers, and instead our responsibility becomes how do you make it so that the characters can have different powers, but all the characters can have enjoyable. All the players operating the characters can have enjoyable experiences. Now you can have that in a game like basketball. You don't have to be in the NBA in order to enjoy the game, and it matters the how the games are structured, whether you will. Now, that doesn't mean we're we throw balance out the window. Of course, there is such a thing as a power which is too powerful. If the best characters in the game all end up having power A or power A and B, then that's a bad thing, and those powers need to either be nerfed or should have been nerfed before they were designed, or something like that. But so we're aiming for the individual powers being such that none of them dominate. That is, none of them are required in order to be the best. And but the different combinations will definitely yield characters that are better and worse than others. And a lot of there will be a lot of interesting I believe in play when you have a character that doesn't work so well for you, and you trade it or loan it to a friend, and it turns out that it works very well for them. Getting the most out of your character uh, is the focus of should be the focus of play, rather than to get the best character in the universe. And this is something which I look for in a lot of games. In Magic, unless I'm often very interested in what the best deck is and what the meta is, and what the ecosystems are in the championships, but I'm much more interested generally in limited environments like drafts because they tend to bring out more interesting play. So you don't have the best decks, but the quality of your play will tend to have more of a front seat than with constructed, and and I often regret it in a game like Hearthstone that I would play decks which weren't so good because I liked the way they played, and that there was no recognition for that fact that I might be the best player in the world for that deck. But if it didn't end up going up the ladder, it was just garbage. Um, I instead want to see quality of play brought to the forefront rather than the all the entire spotlight being on the tools you're bringing.
And thank you, Richard. And that is really at the heart of so much of Chaos Agents' design. And to be honest, also one of the things that is the most interesting thing that we have to communicate. Because when people come in, whether they're coming in from the Magic world or coming in from the video game MOBA battle royale world, there is a shift in that expectations. And what we found is that once people do make that shift and embrace the chaos, so to speak, the experience becomes a lot more about, okay, how do I take this thing that I've been given and try to optimize it. Which again, going back to the player agency, we will have a lot more tools for the tools in the near future. Um, so thank you so much. Great question once again from the community here. So what I'm going to do next is Steeks has a great question, one of our veterans, and Steeks, your answer actually has a two-parter. There's a meta answer which I'm going to give you in 5 seconds, and then hand off to Richard for the more interesting answer. So you can go ahead and ask your question, or I can ask it for you, as you said.
Sure. Hey, Richard, Stefan Steeks. Yeah, I was just wondering, do you have plans for duos or triples or other team-based modes where people are working together to win?
Thanks, Steeks. And as I said, I'll give the meta question. The meta question is actually the answer is a resounding yes. We will actually have things called alliances coming very soon on a meta side, which at least, and we have other things planned, but we at least is going to let you share, basically freely play with each other's agents. So that becomes a really strong incentive for people to team up. But there's a much more interesting aspect, which is the in-game aspect, which Richard and Draknab and staff have been working on. So, Richard, I'm going to hand off to you, and Drakna, feel free to jump in if Richard doesn't cover any of your favorite ideas there. So, Richard, what are your thoughts on the in-game team aspect?
Oh, yeah. I'm very excited about the possibilities of team play. What we would like to see forms where you join with a small team or a big team. Having half the people on a particular team, I think, could be perfectly good. And have it so that your characters do not trigger off of each other's enemies. So there's no friendly fire, or there only is in the fact that you might get caught in an area effect weapon or something like that. I see the system we're building as being one where there's a lot of flexibility as to how you employ how you set up the challenge for people, and I think that is the most natural one to explore first, which is having a teammate. But yeah, I'm sure I'm blanking on some stuff here, but in short, yeah, I think it's very interesting to consider that, and I look forward to trying it.
Yeah,
Awesome, thanks.
The only thing I'd add there is that, like, I'm particularly very excited about team play. There are some characteristics that I think could make it really fun and exciting, but there are some characteristics that also may just make this not work out at all. So I expect over the next year, as we're working towards beta and release, we'll probably be trying many, many different types of modes, many different types of play as we're getting there. And multiplayer and team-based multiplayer is definitely going to be one of them. So it might be the most fun version is what Richard was talking about, where you have like a 16v16 battle where there are two giant teams. Maybe it's just teams of two. Again, there are lots of details to figure out there, but we're pretty excited about trying to bring in more and more social components to the game over time so that it's not just you on an island with your agent. You're able to do more interacting with other agents. You're able to have a guild, a team, all of these things we think are important to figure out over the next many months.
Yeah, it should be added that one of the things that, while I think there's a lot of play value there that I want to explore, one of the things I want to be cautious of is making it so that when people jump into the game the first few times, that they feel like they've got to be in a guild. We don't want them to jump in and feel like they're being picked on, or that they have to go find a teammate in a environment which, in a community which they're new to. So that is why, I mean, that's one of the reasons why the battle royale mode, where everybody's a free agent, is the one we're focusing on most. But if those concerns are controlled, I'm all about the team competition.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Ragnar. Following up on that, Goldar, who's another one of our legendary veterans, asks, what will the end product look like in terms of loaning and trading agents? Will there be a kind of marketplace? Will it be auction house style to list an agent with the lowest expected bid, then loan it to the highest bidder? Will it be possible with loaning? Sorry, I think that's right. So will it be auction house style to list an agent with the lowest? You know what? I'm going to restart this question. What will the end product look like in terms of loaning and trading agents? Will there be a kind of marketplace? Will it be auction house style to list an agent with the lowest expected bid, then loan it to the highest bidder, etc.?
I'm drawing a blank. Can you answer
Yeah, I
that?
can
Jump
take
in.
that. Yeah, quite easily. So actually, what's coming up very very soon is the ability to. So there are two aspects. There is basically initially the what we call the bench right now is going to evolve to something called a market, which will basically simulate a secondary market where essentially it's a guaranteed trade as long as you have the resources. And then there will be, of course, the ability for you to list your agent in the marketplace and get bids for it. Now, in terms of how the specifics there are going to work, we are going to try out a few different models. The one thing we're going to know for sure is that we're going to try and prevent people from like just buying out the market or whatever it is. One of the ways to control that is the idea of agent slots. So you actually have to earn into expanding your house, which expands the ability for you to have a larger roster, and then gets you this thing to fill those slots. Right now, what we are imagining is that once you fill a slot with an agent, you're going to be able to relatively freely swap out agents from that slot with the market. But then when you want to fill a new slot, that's when you will need an ACT or something that essentially gets you your agent permanently. Now, whether you can loan an agent for an empty slot is still TBD. We are still sort of thinking through that. But that's going to sort of be the starting sort of set of features, which is what initially when you get access to these features, you'll be able to trade freely with the market. The next thing is going to be able to list agents on the market, and what we are going to make this all part of the progression so that we are not overwhelming new players. So you're going to earn into these powers. So initially you can just trade with the market directly, but then you might be able to get the ability to list your own agents. Then eventually you might be able to set your own price. One of the reasons for that also is that we want to test out how which of these is the most interesting for players, because we don't want to build a bunch of features which no one is going to end up using. So that's sort of an overall take on this. But then, in terms of Richard, something that I know you're excited about as a SCAF, and SCAF is actually here with us, is the idea of like stakes type tournaments and so on. So maybe either Richard or SCAF, you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So yeah. So one of the things we draw a lot of inspiration from the sports world and horse racing because these are places where imbalanced tools are being competed against one another. So there's a lot of ways that those worlds deal with that. So one of the ones that has really intrigued us has been horse racing, where the horse you race can be purchased uh, for a fixed amount of money. So say it's a $5,000 rate, a $5,000 stakes race, and then you what that means is you can participate to the race, but anybody can buy your horse for $5,000. Um, and this does a lot of things. It creates a market for the horses. It makes it so that the races are more fair, and that there's a place for the less strong horses to race. Um, so if you've got stakes races for $500 or $1,000, you don't want to be racing the top horses there. You want to be saving them for races where somebody's not going to be able to purchase them for a pittance. And so what you do with a structure like that, you get these interesting situations where and they can be win-win. Like you enter the race and you enter the game, and your agent does well and it's purchased from you, and you've had a good game, you won it, and you made a profit. Um, and but yeah, we see that we think that there's a lot of possibilities for structures like that.
Thank you so much, Richard. Scav, did you want to add anything? I know this is your favorite, but we're also coming up on time. But Scav would love to hear from you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is the general idea with these agents being so different from each other. Is no matter what the power level of the agent is, there's always some place where it's interesting, like that literally for every agent. So you can imagine very extremely low claims events, where you take an agent you would sort of normally think of as terrible, but nobody wants to bring in like a super, super, super good agent into that race. And so I say race, but into that match. So yeah, it should be a way of not only differentiating sort of all of those agents and having them have a home, but it instantly creates a marketplace, which is how it's used in real life horse racing. Is It's not just to keep the races fair; it also is the marketplace, because the best way for you to sell something off for $1,000 is enter $1,000 claimed race and win.
Thanks, Scav. Um, Richard, we might go over by a few. I'm hoping that will be fine. So, but we will try to keep it limited. Richard, just checking in with you. How long do you think you can go past the hour?
I'm flexible.
Okay.
So indefinitely.
Oh, great. That's great, because we wanted to do a match. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to prioritize the questions prioritize folks who have not had a chance to ask questions yet before going to the repeat questions. But then once we get through everyone's new question, every new person's question, we'll just do a quick poll to see if folks want to answer the remaining questions, which these are fantastic questions, or whether folks want to move on to playing some matches with Richard, or both. But anyway, I will keep trucking on here. These are some great questions. I'm going to actually ask the second question by Dr. Kimchi, because Daredevil also wanted that question asked. So I'll ask it specifically on behalf of Daredevil here. So Richard, Daredevil asks that imagine if Chaos Agents takes off and finds itself with a deep player base, fantastic sales, staying power, etc. So it's a success condition. Um, what would you like the future of Chaos Agents to look like? Do you see this as a one and done type of game, or do you have some specific ideas as a long running franchise with the game to be successful or why?
Um, well, I think this is the sort of game that, if successful, you could go on developing content for it for a long time, and that's what I would hope to do. But further, we've talked about fleshing out the world and making it so that, for example, it wasn't just Chaos Agents you were playing, but there was sort of space a space bar, and you were playing some uh, games in there which were set up to be played between matches, or if they're compelling enough on their own. And so you have a a venue to get a lot of smaller games out there in support of this sort of big world of Chaos Agents as a big auto battler royale.
Thank you, Richard. Yeah, and I can tell you from my side, that's one of the key things that was exciting for us when we were looking at, what we were going to work on first. Chaos Agents not just by itself has a lot of staying power. We can obviously keep adding a lot. We have ideas on obviously how to bring, interesting external IPs into Chaos Agents and vice versa. So there's a lot of extensibility. But as Richard says, the idea that your agent is globally unique and is kind of creating its own story. So think about it. Every time you play with an agent, that kind of gets added to their unique history that you played with them. They had a certain outcome. So we can obviously do a lot with that, right? And, your Chaos Agent can appear in other games, as Richard said, that is connected to the core Battle Royale, but in the future, other things too. And, we've invested a lot in building out our auto battler engine, but that's also because we wanted these agents to have that board game like simple AI that can potentially be put into other systems. So imagine like Robo Rally or Mechs and Minions. There's a lot of types of interesting systems that are very successful in the board game space. We could bring in with the same kind of ideas, and your Chaos Agents could hop from different place to place because they have their powers. So anyway, something we are very excited about, as you can tell. Next is one of our new stars, Vito. Vito asks, Richard, would you say that Magic the Gathering has greatly influenced your input into Chaos Agents? If so, to what extent? Or would you say it has had minuscule impact in your overall game design philosophy in case of Chaos Agents?
It's impossible to separate the impact Magic has had from my almost all of my game design. In particular, I've begun to think about certain of my games as massively modular games, and that's because they. So KeyForge, when it came out, people struggled what to do, how to categorize it, because it was very aggressively not a trading card game. You couldn't trade the cards; they weren't. You couldn't build a deck. But at the same time, it was disingenuous to say that it had nothing to do with trading card games, because it had a very similar play DNA. And so I began to think of these games as being massively modular games, and there's a lot of design characteristics that they share and that are brought to Chaos Agents. So yeah, it's a very large impact, and ways how is that impact reflected? It's in things like how the different combinations work out, whether how to really get combos in the game to be exciting and not too unbalanced. How to deal with the immense variety that you want to see in a game like this.
Thanks, Richard. And we too actually has a fun follow up to that, which you can maybe answer quickly, which is what is the perfect magic card in your opinion and or your favorite?
um, well, my favorite is Scheherazade, and I guess I can't call it perfect because it's not in some ways playable, but Scheherazade was it's a card where when you play a sub game of Magic, and whoever wins it, whoever loses it, that sub game takes a hit to their life. Um, and the reason I like it so much is I really like meta cards like Sleight of Mind and Magical Hack. Um, things which feel like they're playing with the meta rules, and this is as meta as it comes. I liked how it was reflected the Arabian Nights because Scheherazade was known for telling stories within stories, and so to have her card generate games within games felt very appropriate. Um, and further, I really like the card because back when it was created, there weren't any deck construction limits as were adopted soon after that. So you could construct a deck out of all planes. Scheherazade's a white card, and Scheherazade's, and you got this very interesting killer deck where where you would play a couple turns and then you would play Scheherazade, play a couple turns, play Scheherazade, play a couple turns, play Scheherazade, and if the deck were large enough, eventually you would deck your opponent, and then you would lose they would lose that many nested game, and then you would play another one and they would lose that, and so then they would eventually lose that nested game, and then they would pop out to the next level. And so when you did all the math, it ended up being something like you could beat almost every deck unless that was like a turn one win. And it would take maybe 50,000 sub games in order to beat a 60 card deck. Anyway, that sort of cinches it as being my favorite card.
That's such a cool answer. Thank you. Thank you, Vito. Great questions. All right, Way to Oblivion. Um, I'm always jazzed by that name too. Um, are there great question this one? Are there any technical limitations or disparities that have caused you to compromise on your original ideal version of Chaos Agents?
Wow, that is an interesting question. I mean, I can't think of anything technical. One of the reasons it's hard to process the question is because I usually don't think of limitations that hit you as being. I mean, they have to be pretty severe before I start thinking of them as compromises. Usually, they're more like things you design around and that bring their own character to the game. So um, uh, I would like to uh, see 100 people play, and that's a technical limitation right now. We're still at a handful of people, and we will get up to much more in coming versions. I wouldn't say that compromised the design in any way. That's just a delay to the realization. And yeah, I'm afraid. Yeah, I can't really think of anything. Although I'm sure there are some good some good answers that I'm not coming up with.
I can jump in a bit here. I think it's mostly like delays for the number of people in a game, delay for the full scale map. The things that are going to be implemented in there. The technical implementation right now just turns out to mostly be a delay for stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Yeah, everything's in in the queue, and so far, yeah, hope to see everything come out.
Thanks, Richard. Thank you, Scap. That's very generous of both of you. Appreciate it. And yeah, as we discussed, we just have, as I said in the beginning, just tip of the iceberg in terms of what is planned. So I wish we had a much larger team already to be able to do the things we want to do. But that's hopefully coming soon. But we have some very exciting things planned for the alpha launch and the two versions after that. And actually, one of the big things we have in the queue for early next year is we'll be migrating to Azure. And as part of that, we're going to be doing a rewrite of some of the core code that will finally let us break through the limitations, some of the limitations we have around our processing power, and go to 24 plus agents quickly. And I want to call out our friend Andrew Gross, who was part of our community, came in to just help us however he could with his technical background, and actually helped us identify some pretty core improvements in our core code. So again, the community has been such a blessing to us in order to actually be able to pull off like what we hope is going to be eventually like a AAA level experience with a very small team. Um, So, Richard, did you have anything else to add there?
Yeah, I would just add it's not answering that question in particular, but it would be. I think it's related that I did not expect to have something playable as soon as Arca and his team put it together, and frankly, I wouldn't have asked for that because I didn't expect it to be as good as it ended up being, but it has been marvelous. Not only because it turned out to be better in its primal state than I expected, but because exploring this new design ground, it's really useful to get a lot of people's eyes, people's plays, people's ideas onto it early, and so it's been a blessing.
Thank you, Richard. That makes my weekend for sure. Yeah, thank you again to the community, and we have so much more fun stuff planned for you. And I think this is the last original question we have, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to keep going with the Q&A for a few more minutes, and then we'll look at this poll to see if you want to switch over to matches or finish up the questions. There are some really good ones here. The next one and the last original one, last new person is Rolling Code. I love that name also. Richard, do you foresee increasing the number of elements in the game over time to continually expand the strategic combinations? Any concern as new desirable skills are introduced could favor whales versus free to play, depending on the monetization model? I think that's a fantastic question.
Yeah, absolutely. I do not actually see new elements. I see new classes for sure. One of the things that I learned, so I was never interested in new colors in Magic. It any argument for them just felt like they were just there for novelty, not really adding to the play value. One of the things that excited me when I worked on Keyforge was that I realized that that the houses, which are kind of the analog of colors, that you could have unlimited numbers of those, and it was not true. They each had it wasn't it didn't have the same characteristic of Magic where it felt like it was just a novelty. They're creating a new house in Keyforge offered the players a lot, um, and and I see that as being completely parallel here. But you have both representations. I think that adding new elements just it won't have to bang for the buck that adding new classes that rely on those elements will have.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's a really good question. All right, and we are back to our legendary friend Paintface. Um, he asks, how has working and playtesting a digital game differed from a tabletop game from your perspective? What do you miss from developing tabletop games? What do you get in digital format that you don't get in tabletop games?
Now, well, done uh, I've done a reasonable amount of digital development, and um, and in general, it's in general it's much more painful than paper development because I can come up with things and test them so quickly with paper. Um, but the things you get are that once you've got the framework, you can actually experiment within limitations much faster than with paper. You do get this amazing power to be able to introduce mechanics that aren't feasible with paper, um, and uh, uh, and you get this connectivity of being able to play uh, with people all over the world, and to test it in that way. So you've got this larger startup time, which is difficult, but you have once you put the work in, you can actually start getting out a much more exciting playtest process because you can test things and get a community to give you feedback so quickly and so effectively. Now it's always going to have certain limitations. You can't just do anything you like you can often with paper, but you can play around with an awful lot of stuff if you're creative and you've got a solid team, which I am blessed with Chaos Agents.
Thank you again, Richard. Really appreciate that. Um, this is another interesting one. I'm gonna take this second one from Way to Oblivion, and then we also only have three more, so I think we can finish them up quite easily. This is a very interesting one. Way to Oblivion asks, from a gameplay perspective, have you considered extending the exponential experience increase from playing a high number on an element to affect multiple plays on that same term. And I think what they mean by exponential experience is the triangular formula. So the fact that you get more XP. Basically, what they're saying is, okay, if you play two on a brain tile, it's worth 3 points, but playing two one brain tiles in the same turn is currently only worth 2 points. Making these equivalent could maybe help alleviate the sense of missing agency, where players feel like they're always forced to pick the highest numbered tiles.
I'm sorry. What is the suggestion?
Yeah, the basically you're thinking like basically it's a one of the things that people feel bad about. I mean, obviously there's some gameplay this thing to it is when they click ones, and in this case the suggestion is that let's say that you deployed two ones. Could that be considered like essentially the second one gets you more XP to like so that deploying two ones is using two actions is equivalent gives you equivalent XP to deploying two brains using the same action, basically.
So you click one brain, for example, and then you click one shield, and you get some different payoff.
No, it would be more like you click one brain, and then it gets refilled with one brain, and then you click one brain again.
Oh, okay. So in the case where you chain them, um, no, certainly. First of all, I have not considered that. So there is that. The If this is strictly about being able to play elements from the same suit and having them combine in their experience, That's the sort of idea which does have some interest to me. It's kind of exciting. The only question is whether it would end up being worth the having a special rule around it. The core the core decision, the most important decision right now in the game for me is whether it is worth uh, playing the ones in order to build up a bigger payoff. So I personally right now don't feel obligated to take my biggest pool every turn. And the reason for that is because the 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 math I've done has suggested that it is worth that if you really care about gaining, say, life, that if I have 2 life, that it is worth playing out my other stuff in order to get that 3rd life. You can invest a bunch of turns in that, and the difference becomes when I really need that life hit that will push me off that. And so the payoff for getting those big hits are make it so that it's worth saving them sometimes. If that doesn't come through, or eventually the community comes to disagree, and they feel like with experience that's not the case, then I would certainly consider tweaking the payoffs in ways as are suggested, and just changing the formula from a triangular formula to something else in order to make that true, because that's what I'm after. Now, my math has suggested that is what is happening, but game systems are very, very complicated, and so I could have erred, but equally community impression could also be an error, and so I would wait and see how it plays out before addressing that.
Thank you, Richard. Way to Oblivion, did you have a follow up there? I know that you're also interested in game design yourself.
No, thank you for the answer. I was really just curious. I actually feel that the trade-off of the short-term benefit for temporary round benefits is worth the loss of experience.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. And now we are back.
Should be
Sure,
to add to that, if the math is in the correct place, which I don't promise, I think it is, but if it is, then oftentimes what you need is some method of teaching that to players, because that's the sort of thing where if that's the way it should be played, community, because you want in general, when you've got a game which stands the test of time, I believe any tools you have to make players better is better to employ than to allowing people to discover it themselves. I mean, people will enjoy discovering things themselves, but that's the sort of thing where if it's understood and the community in general agrees with it, then making it so new players understand that is important.
Thank you, Richard. Great answer again. Great question, Way to Oblivion. We're back to our old friend Painface, and we only have 2 more questions after this. Painface asks, you've spoken a bit about the uniqueness of agents in terms of agents being similar to a deck of cards, etc., unique deck of cards, etc. In a world where people make digital avatars, what mark can I put on my agent in terms of gameplay that can distinguish my agent from anyone else who happens to play them? This is an important aspect of the game. I guess, like, what lasting mark can I, as a broker, leave on my agent, even if that agent gets traded or loaned to someone else?
This is this answer in some ways has to involve our technical team, because what I want will here's going up to technical limitations, and the what I want would be that, first of all, your agent has a unique look, which is all its own, and a unique name, which is all its own. And I don't want you to be able to name your agent, because that takes away the character. But that doesn't mean that I don't want you to be able to augment your character with titles they've earned, or trophies, or particular dies, or things like that. And those could come in two forms. They could be things which the agent has earned, and you are therefore able to turn them on and off. And when you trade the agent to somebody else, they would have that, because that's a part of the agent. But could also be ones which are associated with your broker house, and you can give your agents, whatever, a Christmas hat. And that isn't a part of the agent, but is part of your house, and you can augment them in that way. That's what I would look for. I don't know what in the long run is possible, because there's a lot of balls in the air with regard to being able to characterize, with being able to present a coherent agent. I would not want join a game sometime in the future and just see a whole mess of Christmas hats and sombreros and big running shoes or whatever, because everybody's got these ways to characterize, because it's going to make it hard to understand the state of the game. So whatever's done in that way, there has to be a certain subtlety to it. But in principle, that's what I would be looking for.
Yeah, Richard, that's a great answer, and I can augment that a little bit. And Scaff, if you have any thoughts, please jump in. So we actually have a lot of ideas there. When we think about an agent's unique DNA, right now we only focus really on the skill map as kind of being the functional aspect. But there are two other aspects. There's the cosmetic aspect, visual aspect, and then there's the, as I said, the history, the agent history aspect. The cosmetic aspect is as Richard said, it's not an easy problem, but one of the key unlocks is going to be the skill class system, because we actually have a very robust system that Draktab and our technical art team has developed, that basically lets them take skill map and based on the classes and pick and choose items. So for example, let's say that you are a Maseo Sentinel plus Sniper plus Biosculptor. We actually, one of the big things, our development and art is a big thing we need to invest in as we launch the alpha and head towards early access. And one of the big art investments is to create essentially these cosmetics. Like for example, we have like a Maseo Sentinel set of armors. We have a Maseo Biosculptor set of armors, a Maseo Sniper set of armors. And the key is to create the text, which we've already done, to kind of put the skeleton together in a way where you're essentially picking and choosing from these different parts, but creating a character that looks globally unique, but also at the same time looks, as Richard said, coherent. And part of that is what you see today, where you just see the agents colored differently, but that actually is coming from the same tool, which is like taking your skill map and translating it to an agent. It's just that we don't have those many variants yet, just because we don't have those many armor sets yet developed. But I can show you guys some of the armor set prototypes. They look amazing. Like there's a Mahdi, like kind of like Dune looking this thing, which looks fantastic. So each of your agents will look globally unique. There will be opportunities to, like, we'll have some slots that we will be able to replace, but again, as Richard said, it'll make sense functionally. Another thing that we are interested in exploring down the road, once we have our visuals, in-game visuals more worked out, is you kind of see the circle toggle under the player now to show where they've invested, the agent to show where they've invested most of their XP. That's going to turn into hopefully a much more interesting visual system, where just by looking at someone, you'll be able to say, oh, okay, this Maseo who has these three classes has really gone heavy on Sentinel in this particular round just by looking at it. That's also a very hard problem from a UX and visual perspective. We will tackle it eventually. But the first step is to have unique looking agents. And then there's the whole idea of history, which we really haven't explored yet. But, as you are doing things with your agent, as you're like, for example, the fact that Hamfist and Shebula, I forget the Master Tyler's agent over there, who are the two sort of like gold medal winners or the holders of those titles. Those agents will forever have those titles go with them. Now, it's not that obvious when you look at them right now, but we are tracking all that, and all that's going to be in your vault. So even if say Andrew Gross traded away Hamfist to someone else, Hamfist will forever have that accolade. And in the quote unquote secondary market of your virtual BC secondary market, if we did let Andrew set the price for Hamfist, he probably would be able to command a pretty high price, specifically because the community kind of knows his accomplishments. But that is going to be more specifically embedded into the character. So those are the three vectors, so to speak, that your agent will become more and more unique the more and more you play with them. One of the things I'm very excited about that Richard and we Drac now and we've just recently figured out is we're going to actually have, like, right now you're just going up in levels as a broker, but you're going to have a separate level for your agent, which is going to be similar to like your like League of Legends, I think. But essentially, like, let's say that an agent's highest level ever was, like, let's say silver rank 1, and the person who has that agent trades them off to, let's say, to me, and I'm able to take them from silver rank 1 to like silver rank 3, right? That accomplishment, the fact that I figured out how to unlock something interesting in that agent, will be forever sort of in that agent's history progression, that, oh, it was Shoe Maniac that took me from silver rank 1 to silver rank 3. But that might be the best I can do with that agent, and someone else who looks at that map says, oh, I know how to kind of unlock some interesting win conditions here, and I maybe trade them or loan it to that person, and they try to do better. So that is like Richard was saying earlier, how to play a deck optimally is actually a very interesting part of strategy games and not explored enough even in online PvP games, because it basically becomes what's your optimal build order and whatnot. So I think that aspect of, like, you take an agent and you improve them, you figure out how to solve that puzzle, is so interesting. And as Richard said, we want to make sure that our game rewards that as much as we can. So I know, sorry, I went on there a little bit, but this is something I care about. So to finish, sorry, Queen Face One.
I was just gonna say, Richard mentioned, like, playing a suboptimal deck optimally, and finding some accomplishment in that, and I think that's kind of what I'm looking for in that sort of thing.
Do you say that you're looking for
cosmetics and stuff is cool, but like knowing that I excelled at playing an agent that nobody else really excels with is like a personal accomplishment for me personally. That keeps me interested in playing that agent.
Would you say that you like to give agents their last chance? Haha.
Possibly.
Yeah. I think that's a terrific goal. That's absolutely something I would strive for, and I'll be looking for different approaches for how to do that. There is a challenge in that you are playing a unique agent, and so we have talked about having some modes of the play which like duplicate bridge, where people are playing playing the same instance and comparing how they do. But barring something radical like that, it's going to be difficult to tell whether you're doing well with your agent unless you're actually opening it up for other people to play, either by trading it away. But I'm certainly open to suggestions for how to address that, because I very much identify with that sentiment. As I said, with Hearthstone, I really do feel like I would play these crazy decks sometimes, and I would play them very well. And it would have been nice if the system had figured out how to acknowledge the fact that getting the 25% win rate I got with it or whatever was actually worth something. It would have been good. Now I don't have an answer to what they could have done there, but once you have a goal in mind, you can begin thinking of ways to get there.
I don't want to be the best player on Hearthstone or even the best Murloc deck player on Hearthstone. I just want to be the best Murloc deck player in the Southwest region.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that brings us to a second to last question, which is actually kind of related. And maybe, Scaff, this is a good one for you, too, to answer in addition to Richard. Vito asks, do you see the potential for Chaos Agents to become a highly competitive game in the future? Multiplayer, esports, etc. What do you think about that aspect?
I think it's certainly possible. I think what we want to make sure is that it's first and foremost a non-competitive game, and it's fun to play that way. I'm always a fan of bringing in the competitive play, for the people that want it, and half the time the purpose is to make everyone feel better about what they're playing, but also to draw those competitive players away from, sort of the normal players, is always part of the goal. But yeah, this game, I think you absolutely could see it as being highly competitive play. I think there's a lot of skill that's going to go into eventually playing really, really, really tricky characters. I do think it's going to be a while before those sort of bubble up and people understand exactly what's going on. So I like right out of the gate, is it going to be super competitive? I would guess not as much. And then as soon as kind of the people understand what's going on and the marketplace settles and people are actually identifying better agents, then I think there's absolutely room to shuffle those better agents combined with the better players, sort of running them off on a pretty competitive level.
Thank you, Scaff. Richard, any
No, that's good.
Okay, so that brings us to the last question from, again, the now legendary Dr. Kimchi, MD. And this is actually a great question to end on, given that this is a community event here. I think we've had a really good time. What a great way to spend a Friday evening here. Kimchi asks, and this is kind of the other side of what Scav just answered, I guess. The Popularium team is doing a fantastic job with community engagement. Thank you. We appreciate that very much. Personally responding to every comment, trying to cultivate a healthy community. Oftentimes we see games having an inverse correlation between profit and community health and engagement. Players lose their voice, we see the game decline, etc. What about Chaos Agents do you feel helps avoid that environment?
Well, from a design perspective, it's a matter. I believe it's a matter of keeping focus on the gameplay experience and what the community wants. This isn't always straightforward, and there's often different voices there. But that is certainly one of the roles I take upon for myself, and we'll try to do my best with regard to that. But it is an issue with many games, and it's very important to cultivate a good relationship between the publisher and the community. More even, I should say there, it's worth noting that it's the level of importance is for a paper gamer. With a paper publisher, it's not as important because you've got the paper product, and they can really do whatever they like with Magic and screw it up completely from your perspective, but you can still play the Magic you have around the table with the friends the way you want to play. With a digital game, you're more in control. You have to answer more to the publisher's got more position of power, and that's something which has to be dealt with very carefully.
Thank you, Richard. Really appreciate that. And I think I'll end up saying on my part, from my side that it's I think every game community, especially multiplayer game community, starts off hoping that they will have a healthy, joyous, competitive but non-toxic environment, and oftentimes it's not possible for many reasons. We saw Helldivers, for example, as a great example of people starting off, really excited about everything they were doing, but then again, so it's just a cycle of like when you get popular, there are going to be people who are not going to be like who are not going to like everything that happens. However, I think from our side, as Richard said, we have done a lot to ensure that the game itself promotes that kind of healthy community. That's also one of the reasons, as Draknap said earlier, like doing things like teams and making sure that people don't get ganged up upon, etc., is important. One of the things that's very interesting about this idea of an agent rank is that it's very difficult to smurf in this game. Like you can't really take a more powerful agent into because the matchmaking happens at the level of the agent eventually. Obviously not right now, as opposed to players and so on. So there's a lot built into the game, but going one step further, the idea that we like from day one, it was very important. Richard, myself, Draknav, everyone, that we have a plan to make sure that the game, like we are making a multiplayer only game. As Richard said, your magic cards are yours. You have them. You can do whatever you want with them, even if you don't want to play competitively or in the format. So you never want to buy another magic card. We wanted to make sure that we are able to make that kind of a promise to our players that you have an agent, you've bought them, you spent your money or time, combination of that on that. That's yours. You have a way of accessing that, no matter what. So we've gone out of our way to like avoid blockchains, things like that, but like create a way where people can run dedicated servers, people can have like their own vaults, etc. So that's not a minor investment either on our part, but that was important for us from a community perspective. And moving forward, what we hope to do is like a big reason why Richard, Scav, Drakna, we started Popularium was because first and foremost from my side wanted to like essentially give Richard and Scav, whom known for a long time, basically a playground to explore these types of ideas that are difficult to explore in a more traditional game development environment, because video game development is expensive. You guys might have heard what the Larian guy in the studio, CEO said yesterday. It's very true. Like we want to build games that we want to play. Richard plays games all day, every single game you can think of in his this thing. Like we're doing this because we love playing games ourselves, and we want to build a game that we enjoy playing. You've seen me. I don't have give you any quarters when I'm playing against you guys, because I love the game. So that's what we want to keep doing and building. And the fact that the community is involved at such an early stage, as Richard said, is a huge blessing. Because on one hand, you get to see all the how the sausage is made, quite literally, with all the crashes. I mean, folk like Paintface and Steaks and Goldar and others have basically gone through periods where it was like barely a game for a little while. So we really appreciate that, but at the same time it gives us a lot of assurance that we are building what people actually want to play, and that's actually what at the end of the day matters to us, that we all build you something that you want to play, that we want to play with you. Anyway, it sounds I know a little bit maybe naive, but that's what we will hopefully continue trying to do as for as long as we can. That's also one of the reasons why we haven't we've tried to avoid taking on investment money, etc. That puts us in a direction where we are pressured by anything other than building something that we all want to play. All right. On that idealistic note, Richard, Scaff, anything else you wanted to share with the community before we wrap up?
No, I think that's a good summation.
Nope. Sounds great.
Awesome. And thank you all for your time. Aki, I will hand off to you, my friend, to organize games as you see fit. We have Richard and Scaff here, which is a rare event, so we should take advantage of it.